All right, buying Gold Coast deep dive episode on the couch today. I'm really excited. We're going to unpack one of the most, I feel, one of the most talked about topics and one of the biggest areas I feel buyers struggle with right here on the Gold Coast, and it's auctions. So we're going to do, we got the couch out. We thought we'd bring two absolute weapons in this field. And we've got Ian Perkins from the Strama Group, one of the lead buyers agent there who specialises. He does a lot of auctions and he's very successful at auctions too. And he's going to be joined. So, Perko, mate, thanks for popping by the couch.
Thanks, Matty.
And, mate, Perko, we're joined by, I like to call him the triple threat in real estate. So he's a sales agent, he's an auctioneer, and he's a good bloke too. So he's the ultimate triple threat in real estate, and none other than Billy Jazz from McGrath Estate Agents.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thanks for being on the couch. So, lads, deep dive. This is just straight into topics. I thought we'd open it up on auctions. I think it's something on the Gold Coast that a lot of people, I reckon they're fearful of, even body language when I go to auction. Like, everyone's scared of auctions. And I don't think it's as scary as what people make out. But hopefully, over the next 20, 30 minutes, the listeners can get an idea from two really good perspectives and two professionals in their side. So I think firstly, Perko, as a buyer's agent, like what do you notice with buy? Like where do you reckon the fear is with auctions, you feel, like after all the people you've been helping in that?
Yeah, I think the biggest fear is that they're going to overpay on the day. They're going to get emotional and they're going to overpay.
Yeah.
So that's why they probably engage people like us. I mean, also too, people come to us and they expect to buy off market, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best time to buy.
It's the best time, yeah.
And sometimes auction is the best time or the only time that you can buy. Why do people go to auction? Probably three major reasons. Firstly, they have to. It's a death or a divorce, so for transparency reasons. There are a lot of parties involved. They need to see the price and for it to be fair, to agree to that price. So auction's a great tool for that. If it's a unique property, where
you can't really
generally
put a
you can't really put a price on it.
Yeah.
It's a great ocean front, or there's going to be a lot of people involved, and you can't really put the price on it. There's that side. And then I think from an agent perspective, and Billy might be able to talk into this, I think the other side is where maybe sometimes the seller and the agent are probably a little different apart in their value perception, and the auction is a good tool to bring the market in and see what the market says about it. And so we probably at that stage would engage in an auction process where we believe the best chance for our client to buy it for the best price is at auction. Our comparable data might be slightly different to your comparable data, and from there we position our client to say, let's keep looking for four more weeks.
Yes.
And if it's we're still in the market and that's still available, well, we'll go to the auction and we'll put a strategy involved, and if we can buy it for the right price, we'll buy it. If not, we'll keep looking.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, Perko. I'll just pre-frame something for any buyers out there, just because the amount of buyers that said, we don't like auctions, can we just buy it pre-auction? Don't know if that could be the best strategy or not, right? So I like how you said there. I definitely agree with you, Perko. Like sometimes it could be better buying it on the day versus prior, based on a few things. So if you're a listener right now and you're a Gold Coast buyer, don't just think just like buying pre-auction, you've saved yourself money potentially. Again, very circumstantial, and we'll talk to Billy about this in a second, but I always pre-frame a lot of buyers like sometimes a day, sometimes post-auction as well. It's a process at the end of the day. So I love what you said there around, strategy. It will come down to the strategy.
And I think the other side of that too is, and we've bought property pre-auction, but that's through strategy of staying in touch with the agent, stalking the open homes to see how many people are actually going through or not. Is the agent getting the response they're looking for or not? And staying in touch with the market, which people can't do if they're interstate in Brisbane or just busy. So we actually stay in touch through the whole process, stay in touch with the selling agent. And if we smell or sniff the opportunity to buy it in an unemotional state at the right price, we'll also buy prior to auction. But it's really, we use the auction process as much as the agent uses the auction process to ensure that our client's in the right position. The same way you want your client in the right position.
I was going to ask from the seller side, so really unique from the buyer side. Now we've got someone who's actually behind the closed doors with the vendor and also an auctioneer himself. Mate, what's your perspective when you hear that from your side?
There's definitely a topic for discussion here, because just listening to you, Perko, he's talking about pre-framing the buyer that this is going to be our best opportunity to buy it for the best price. I'm having that exact same conversation with my seller to say this is going to be our best opportunity to sell it for the best price. So there's actually conflicting recommendations happening on both sides. but then magically the auction becomes the process where we meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or at the
So-
best price, or at the market price. Because that best price for me might still be the same as yours, but we're getting to that price.
So on that note of pre-auction, right, similar concept. With most of my auctions, I say to my sellers, let's make it available prior to auction. If the money's right and it's unconditional and you're happy with
Terms
it,
are good, yep.
bird in the hand, let's get the deal done if that's what you are happy to do. But on that note, I will ask every buyer, I'll say, what's your preference? Do you want to buy before auction or at auction? Every buyer says before.
Before,
and
right,
I know
yeah.
every buyer's going to say before.
Yeah.
So I'm using the sell prior to auction strategy to get the best price, but then you're using the buy prior to auction to get it for the best price for them. Do you know what I mean? Like you're trying to get it for the least, I'm trying to get it for the most, but we're actually doing the same strategy, which is weird.
And you're both trying to come with an outcome at the end of the day,
100%.
right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think every buyer has that fear of paying too much at an auction. But I think most buyers that buy pre-auction will end up paying too much or paying more than they need to because of the fear that they don't want to be in a public environment battling out with 3 or 4 other people. And as a result of trying to avoid that, they'll come in really strong and give it their best prior to auction. It's a perfect scenario for me.
Yeah.
It's exactly what I'm trying to make happen.
Yeah. I was going to ask Billy, when, from a seller's side, when does pre-auction potentially look better for a buyer perspective? Like, is there a circumstance with types of sellers or...
I think, well, I've got one as an example at the moment. If there's other properties that they're interested in,
True.
yeah. So let's say,
So
for
if they're
example,
a sharp, qualified buyer.
yeah, this is my preference. I want to buy this, but then there's also another auction happening a week later.
Yeah.
So I'll say, well, on that
Yes.
note, let's try and wrap this one up for you. If you can't get it, then you're free to bid on the other one.
Just quickly, and is that because your strategy has highlighted that buyer there is probably going to be our buyer for the property? Like, are you kind of educating the seller, hey, this is, Emily, this is their family. They've been looking for X amount of money. This one, I've known them. They're qualified. They're cash. They've missed out on 3 of ours, and they love this one. They're going to most likely be our buyer.
Yeah.
We don't. Is that kind of a scenario?
Absolutely.
And Emily's told you, hey, I've actually got an auction coming up in a week's time, and you're like, that could be my buyer.
Well, that's the information that I must relay to my sellers because most people will think, oh, cool, we got an offer from them, see them at auction. And especially like now where there's a lot more listings on the market, it's like, no, I can't guarantee that these people are going to be there. So if I can get these people to commit to your place prior to auction, same rules, unconditional basis, and the money's right or close to right, then I'm going to make that recommendation that they take it.
Yeah.
But in doing that, I only make that recommendation. So again, this is probably a really important point for a buyer that's trying to buy prior to auction. If someone comes through and they make an offer and it's unconditional and my seller's happy with it, I'll pre-frame the buyer. I'll say, look, letting you know, the seller, in the event of no one else coming through with an offer, you'll own it because your offer is unconditional. My sellers are ready to take it, but I must exhaust any other buyers that have said to me, we're interested in bidding at auction.
Yeah.
So I had a scenario last week where unconditional offer, seller said, we don't want to go to auction. We're happy with that. Let's get it done. And then I notify everyone that's been through, that's inquired, that's inspected, property's going to be sold. If you're interested, you need to contact me ASAP. 3 people call me and I say, we're on the market. These are comparable sales. I suggest being towards the higher end of the guide. Everyone goes, no, we can't be there. So good luck to them. So then my sellers sell prior to auction, knowing that they exhausted all of their buyers, which is the same as going to auction, announcing it's on the market and exhausting it.
Yeah. Really good point there in terms of exhausting your buyers. Like we were just chatting off air of, some agents not exhausting each buyer. Perko, from a buyer side now coming into, say, an auction process, what do you feel buyers are kind of chasing the most? Like obviously price is one, but is it a case of you always, when you're developing that strategy, is it more around the property, the price, the strategy? Like, what are some things you like to highlight coming into, say, an auction day for buyers?
Look, I think number one is that they want the property. And so obviously through a campaign, it gives them another 4 weeks to really want the property. But obviously too, we need to keep emotion and ego out of the process from a strategic perspective. You know, when we go to auction, it should all be about strategy and discipline. So that's what we put into that strategic conversation the Thursday night before. You know, what do they think they'll pay? What would they like to pay? But then where do they walk away? And obviously that walk away price, once we have that, that's really where we have to then develop a strategy for auction. And auctions you've got to be on your game. It's like preparing for us. It's like preparing for a football match or a golf game, you know, whatever. You know, we've got to have the trust of our client, that they will trust us to act on our feet on the floor, because there are a number of different scenarios that pop up. Okay, and they are happy to put that in because they know when they're talking to us, they know they don't have that skill and really nor the kahunas to do it, you know, in the way that you and I do it. You know, you can come in strong, but then you've got to be able to back it up, and you've got to come in strong at the right price, so you've got room to go. You know, if it comes on market on the floor, you know, well then they've got to be responsive on the phone. So they have to understand what we're doing, but then leave it to us to do. If we get out into the back room, the bedroom of negotiation, you know, when we get out there, that's a whole different ball game. You know, and you know, I've seen people cost themselves a lot of money in that situation.
Definitely.
And that's why we can save them a lot of money too. But when we're in the back room, both parties are trying to do a deal.
Yeah.
That's the other side
trying to
too.
get a great outcome, right?
It's not aggressive.
Yeah.
It's not, again, ego's got to stay out. It should be between two parties trying to get a deal done. And then we then have to weigh that up, that if it gets on market and we get it on market, then we go to the floor. Are we expended? Because I've been there and someone put a $5,000 bid on top and I had to walk away, you know, or do we have a little bit more to be able to take to cop that barrage when it comes back on the floor? Because we sometimes, doing what we do really well, get it on market and do all the hard work for the other people on the floor. They know we're a buyer's agent out in the back room. They can just sit and wait. We come back out, next thing you know, we're back in competition. You know, so there's all those different sorts of things. So we've got to be able to read the room and do that. So, you know, I think strategically, I don't think the buyers have the confidence to do what we do. And that's why we're of value to them.
Yeah, and I think you've highlighted a good point there. You don't know what you don't know either, right? Especially if you've only done one or two auctions. Some people have never done an auction, right, as a buyer. And I love how you said, like, people will spend more time, you know, choosing what outfit to wear for the day than potentially spending $2 million on Friday at 12 o'clock. Like, it's just crazy. Like, people go so blind into auctions. And one add value that Perko said there, if I can unpack it, is understanding the scenarios. It's one thing we all do as buyer's agent with our buyers, Billy, so you can get perspective, is kind of highlighting every scenario that could come up, could come out on the floor straight away, like on the market. We got to know what we're going to do then. Could go behind closed doors, they said, could pass in. We've had a few where it passed in, but we stay there and we try to work with the seller and the agent there. So it's highlighting all of these scenarios that,
and also
because when it comes up,
we see all the auctioneers on the coast.
Yeah.
So also understanding what they do and how they do it. You know, knowing who uses vendor bids and who doesn't. You know, knowing their strategies in the back room and not. So it's all those things, profiling the agents. You know, knowing when we're being spoken to honestly or truthfully, you know, to know where we really do stand or not stand. And then there's the other one, Matt, too, which we were talking about before too, is when you get to a situation, you're the only bidder. And that's happening a lot more now too. You know, there's less buyers who can buy at auction.
Yeah.
So, and there might be 2 or 3 registered, but you might be the only bidder. Then all of a sudden you're back into that one-on-one and you don't really know where you're at until you might get into the back room and you hear where the reserve is. Then you've got to think on your feet again because it can seem lost.
Yeah.
You know, you can seem lost. I can't afford that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's then about how you can communicate where you stand without giving your hand away totally and getting a job done and getting a deal done.
Can I make a comment? Something I've heard you say a few times now is the back room, right? So I'm just thinking if buyers listening to this and thinking about an auction and all that, like, what's the back room? Yeah. What goes on in the back room,
It's a special room, isn't
but,
it? Yeah.
you know, I'm just sort of like thinking out loud here, but you've got the theatre room, which is where the auction's conducted.
Correct.
And as an aucauctioneer, part of the auction is creating theatre and momentum and dialogue and all of that, right?
Energy,
But the back room, like with most of my auctions in my area, in my price range, most of mine, it's the deal room. It's actually where the deal happens. Yeah. And a lot of my auctions in our little market do end up being 1 or 2 bidders and all that.
Yeah.
And most of the time, and I'll pre-frame my sellers prior to auction, I'll say, look, it's very likely we're going to get bidding starting at X amount of dollars, and then it's likely to come to a pause at X. That pause is normally reflective of where the feedback's been throughout the campaign. When we pause, we're then going to have a chat. We're going to come into the back room or whatever. We're going to go back and forth with the buyer. I think for a buyer, if you make it to the back room, you're in deal city.
You're in a
Like,
good
you've
city.
got an
Yeah.
opportunity.
We want to be there.
Yeah.
Our first strategy is we want to be the person in the back room.
Having the
We want to be the
conversation.
person in the back room. We want to be there.
So where I find what I see a behaviour in buyers where I don't feel that if they haven't got a buyer's agents, I don't feel that they're maximising an opportunity.
Yes.
Is when they enter the back room, the deal room, they cross their arms and they're like, nah, I'm staying put. And it's like, do you realise if you just keep this conversation flowing, if you just do the dance with my seller right now, you're likely going to own it.
100%.
But some of them look at that as in, why am I going to bid against myself? The other bloke's 10K less.
Yep.
But you're not bidding against yourself. You're negotiating with the seller.
Directly, yeah.
Which is exactly what you wanted because
100%.
you didn't want to be at the auction.
100%.
You wanted a private negotiation. Now you're in the back deal room. You've got a private negotiation and you're crossing your arms.
And you've got some thinking time out there.
Absolutely.
Because if it's happening on the floor, you've got to be there making your decisions straight up, looking at your partner and
Everyone
going,
will
can we
look at-
afford another $3,000, and making those, don't give it away, we're at our limit now, we can't put it, all that. We read that non-verbal communication. We're loving it.
100%.
We love the smell of an auction. We love because we know, and not being arrogant, we know we're ahead of the game. We know we've got an advantage, and we don't play on that. We're not arrogant about it, but we know how to read the room, as do you. I mean, when you're on the floor, going out and having that conversation, sometimes it's better for you to take the momentum, know you're above reserve and say we're on market and keep the tete going.
Yeah.
That's your call.
That's right.
Our call is to how do we get ourselves out of this competition and try and
put it in the back room.
Get in the back room and get some thinking space and some talking space, because also too, we can use that to our advantage with our buyer to get them to where they need to be based on what you're telling us. And that's also really important. And it's better to do it in a quiet environment than we're over your budget now. We're texting them. Can you please text me? You'll go to that because we've got compliance as well. And we're trying to look at this, and we've got people over our shoulder. We've got them in their ear, and we're just trying to make it happen, look cool. And sometimes it gets hard. So sometimes the back room's our friend as well too. We want to get there. We want to get there and know after 4 weeks where we need to be, and then where our client wants to be, and get a deal done.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's so true. It's like the back room. Yeah. And I it's one of my biggest. I'm so passionate about it. It's like an auction day, right? Because I've been a sales agent too. There's no better 90 minutes to get this property. Like the seller has not gone to the auction thinking, I want to pass this in. The agent wants to slap his sold sticker and get on Instagram and say, I'm the man, like sold at auction again. Like there's no better, everyone wants to win on auction day. It's just like, so you're so true. I see, again, me and Perko look at body language. Like as soon as it goes back room, people close off. It's like, man, I love that. It's like,
where it's at.
there is no better 10-minute period to try and get this thing for our client. And so hopefully that adds value to buyers. Like just think that 90 minutes, everyone is mentally there to do something and make it happen.
I think one thing to add to it is that, and most buyers agents will know this, when a deal doesn't happen in the deal room, because let's say a buyer has decided to take advantage of the situation where they're the highest bidder, and they're like, nah, that's where I'm going to stay, right? It happened to me only last week. Auction passes in, and within the next 24 hours, you get like 2 increased offers, perhaps from a conditional buyer that was there, or perhaps the underbidder at the auction has said, well, we still really want to buy it. And then all of a sudden, you've got this auction after the auction.
Yeah, correct.
You know, and now they have to pay more, and they're not negotiating with the seller.
Yes.
They're competing with other buyers. So they've put themselves in the exact position where they don't want to be, which is competing against other buyers. But all along, they've been asking for that opportunity to negotiate with the seller, which is the deal room. And then they get there, and you're like, you're here. And they're like, nah, I don't want it.
Yeah.
You know?
And they're blinded. No different to before auction. You've got that multi-offer situation going, and we're relying on our good faith of asking and our question asking ability to try and engage somewhere. But we when you're in that back room, and if you know if we know where our client's at, and we're talking the same number, we'll help get it done. That's our game, is to get it done. That's the key for exactly what you're saying. We don't want to get back into that not knowing.
That's right.
And that's why the auction's good. It's transparent. It's transparent.
Yeah.
It's a much better place to be. However, can I ask a question? My question to you, Billy, is auctions in today's market, are they as effective? Are they as effective given there are less qualified buyers to buy at auction? Is an expressions of interest campaign stronger? Like what are you seeing out there in the marketplace from an auction perspective? Because I'm seeing lower clearance rates. I'm seeing less buyers at auction. So from that perspective, and I might see 3 or 4 people there, and then they don't bid. And I always wonder about that. Why do you register if you're not going to bid?
Yeah.
Or why wouldn't you lead and see where you get to? But what are you seeing with auctions out there?
I definitely agree with you. Less bidders, less active bidding. I think a big reason why more of them aren't selling is because buyers having more to choose from. Like listings have certainly increased. The last 6 to 8 weeks, I haven't seen anything like that in years, right? But when you ask, are they as effective? I think statistically, no, selling on or before. But I think the effectiveness of the auction still remains. So what I mean by that is we still get identified buyers. We still may have bidding, and then it might pass in. But that whole process, I still believe, is really important, 1, for the buyer, and 2, for the seller. And quite often, we're still getting them done shortly after the auction. Now, I'm convinced that if that auction process didn't unfold the way it did, it probably wouldn't have happened. Does that make sense? So sometimes sellers need to experience time on market or an auction or a public auction to understand that, okay, the price I've been trying for is not out there. It's been reflected back to me. And then sometimes the buyers need to experience the same thing. And I think the auction does that still in this market really effectively. So I've noticed some agents, because the statistics of auctions are less, have started reverting to expressions of interest or offers by X amount of day, X date. But my suggestion for my sellers is still the same. Part of the reason for auction is we're looking for an unconditional offer. We're trying to get the best conditions prior to auction, create that environment of competition, reduce the days on market. Whereas I think with expressions of interest and all that, you're kind of doing a private treaty auction without an auction. I think just do one or the other,
No, it's a good point. And there's so many different ways, as Perko said before too, on where an auction could go: pre, at, post, right? One thing as we kind of wrap up, I'm really curious to know, I guess, strategy wise for buyers, interested to hear obviously from a buyer, but also from an auctioneer. Like, if we were to add value to buyers right now, where do you think could be 1 or 2 key things coming into an auction that a Gold Coast buyer could actually do to just increase? It doesn't mean they're going to win, just increase their chances of winning an auction. What do you think? 1 or 2 things from each of you, from your perspectives.
I'd start by saying definitely make yourself known to the seller, right?
That's a good one.
So whether that means a pre-auction offer. If I was a buyer, I probably wouldn't go in guns blazing with my best offer prior to. I'd probably submit something that I think was fair, and if the sellers accepted that, hey, win. But if not, my hat's in the ring.
Yeah.
Right.
And you're going to be notified throughout. Yeah.
And secondly, I hear a lot of this through buyers, but you cannot rely on, if you identify a property and you tell an agent, hey, I'm interested, if this sells, can you please call me, or I'll see you at auction. You just cannot rely on being contacted.
Yeah.
Or if they receive an offer, that they're going to call you to say, hey, I'm about to sell this, are you still interested or not? So you either need to be incredibly proactive and diligent with your communication with that agent consistently right up until the auction, or have a buyer's agent doing it for you. Because my process is, if I'm going to sell it prior to auction, I call everyone, I'm going to sell it, are you in or are you out? So everyone gets the opportunity. But we were just talking about this before.
Yeah.
So many times I'll make an offer and they go, oh, hey, sorry, but it's sold to someone else. And it's like, mate, if you come back to me, I would have had another crack. So you've probably just cost your seller 50, 60 grand. So high communication if you're interested. Make yourself known to the seller, because if you come in first week and then you're still there at auction, you're the highest bid, your name has been in front of my seller's face from day one of the campaign.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They've come back second, third time. There's familiarity there. They begin to like you. They see that you're invested.
You've been trying to work with them,
And then you become the highest bidder, and then you're unconditional. And I feel like that's the criteria of a really solid buyer.
And I agree with you 100%. That's probably our strategy. Just get if they want to buy it and it's going to go to auction, get them involved. Get them involved. If it helps the process, put an offer in. Show that you're real. Okay. Obviously, you're not going to give your whole hand away. You're never going to give your whole hand away. That's really, really important. And so, if you're going to put a bid in, it should be a good bid, a good enough bid, but understanding that they're not going to countersign you. in an auction campaign, depending on where you're at. You know, the seller's not going to give their hand away.
Yeah.
So, pop a bid in. Make sure that you're following the campaign. Stay in touch with the agent for exactly all those reasons. But again, don't be scared of showing that you're enthusiastic in buying a property. I think that's the other side too, because when it gets to the back room, the agent's going to have empathy back to you as well. You know, I think everyone forgets about the empathy side, not emotion, but the empathy side. You know, you see someone coming through your auctions. You know, this is finally the property that could suit them. You know their budget because you've seen enough of them, and you're empathetic towards them. You like to help them, and if you can help them achieve it and be honest with them, it'll happen. My big piece of advice is engage your buyer's agent to help you. And I'm not doing that from a selling perspective. I just think we do it well. And there's always another property that you can go and buy, but at the end of the day, if you want to be sure that you are paying the right price or the fair price, you know, to get the property you want, I think that's what we do. I think that's what
Can I just add one more on? You mentioned about a counter offer prior to auction, and this is something that I come in later in the piece in educating a buyer that if someone's wanting to buy it prior to auction, which most buyers do, they make an offer, they haven't given it their best, but often they're expecting a counter offer from the seller. So I think a lot of the market or the buyer's market don't understand that in Queensland, right, we as agents nor the vendor can disclose what their selling price is. So if let's say you make an offer of $1 million prior to auction, you know, and 1.2 would be good money. And if the seller doesn't accept that, you might be expecting a counter offer of 1.2. The seller can't. And the agent can't actually say, if you went to 1.2, it's yours.
It's yours, yeah.
Right? But that doesn't mean that buyer can't increase their offer.
100%.
Yeah, so then at that point, they can either choose to go to auction, they can increase, but I feel like it's up to us as agents and buyers agents to pre-educate them to say, look, we're going to make an offer, but don't expect a counter offer.
And that's the strategic part of it. That's the strategic part of it at the end of the day. Also, too, if they're using a buyer's agent, and in that scenario, you know, we probably wouldn't offer the 1 million. You know, we've got the same comparable sales data that we're working with. You know, we mightn't agree with yours and you mightn't agree with ours, but at the end of the day, they're probably not far away. But if there was middle ground, if we had been observing the campaign and we didn't believe the interest was there or at that level, you know, we might offer you 1.1 and say, there's your offer. I can't guarantee you will be there at auction time because we're also looking at 12 Lake Avenue. And so at the end of the day, it's up to your seller to consider it. And then from there, it comes back to dialogue and again, doing it right.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day,
It's a huge one, isn't it? And that's where I guess reps is a big one as well. That's why I always say to people, it's not so much what to buy. Sometimes it's how you buy as well. And like, again, you've done X amount of thousands of auctions. You've bought thousands probably at auction. It's just like the repetition of all these things. So if you're a buyer out there, I think just throwing your hat in the ring, not being afraid, getting the dialogue spat back at you is sometimes too. I remember some early on buyers always give the advice, just to feel what the agent's saying, because it can come across as a lot and overwhelming, right, if you're not used to it. And I think just sometimes buyers just need to kind of take the training wheels off before going to auction. I think too many go into auction with the training wheels on, and you get people who are trained professionals trying to compete and also work against in terms of it's just hard. It's really hard for the average buyer. So key things there for buyers. I think I heard reactive versus proactive buying. I love that one because a lot of buyers on the Gold Coast do expect, you know, just things to fall in their lap. I think this competitive market on the Gold Coast, you got to be proactive, right? You just have to be. I think I love making yourself known and being involved in the huge. It's not the agent's response. Like, you need to be proactive. You need to be in his back pocket or she's back pocket, right? And then the last one is hunting intel and feedback. I think is a good one too. Like as buyer's agent, that's a big one. And people like Billy as auctioneers, they're also hunting. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys are hunting a bit of feedback as well from buyers to pass
it's essential.
on. Yeah.
In order for the seller to make an educated decision after a 3.5 week auction campaign, that feedback, like for example, if we're having a reserve setting meeting, that reserve setting conversation is based on real market feedback now. But when we list the property, we're listing the property on opinions. Now the seller thinks it's worth 2 mil, the agent thinks it's worth 1.7. So we're actually going into this on opinions. There's nothing tangible or factual
facts,
there, right?
True.
But then 3.5 weeks later, we sit down, we're like, all right, we've now got some factual information that you can make an educated decision based on. So those pre-auction offers, crucial, right? You know, and sometimes I think buyers will understand that and maybe try and do a low ball offer prior to auction, and that's not going to condition my sellers and might condition some other sellers out there. But so agents will be able to identify when a buyer is trying to strategically condition a seller. But then you have a buyer who comes through who's really genuine. They've missed out on a few other properties. You know, they've made their offer. It's a best offer they can afford. That becomes really important information when we go to setting a reserve. That conversation is essential to the deal room that happens the following day at auction.
Yeah.
When we say, remember we said this, and now we're here. Now we're 20K above that. Then my sellers are in that, okay, we're winning now. Then we're in deal mode.
That's what it's about. Everyone wants to win.
Yeah,
everyone wants to win an auction, and it's got to be a win-win scenario.
Absolutely.
And again, it comes back to where the buyer and seller are at, but everyone wants that win.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. And one thing I heard there as well, Billy, I guess add value to buyers is like feedback's essential. So don't be someone who is super closed off to the agent and not giving honest feedback too. Like one of our biggest prerequisites as buyers agents, hey, have you called the agent and given some feedback? Because it's just so vital for the campaign. Just lastly, fellas, as we wrap up, one last question. Market 2025 is fast approaching. So, you know, a lot of people suggesting, you know, that sort of Feb, March might get a bit of a slash in the interest rate. Stocks definitely coming up. I feel buyer confidence. Inquiries is starting to pick up. It's starting to get hot, I feel. What's, I guess, your take from a buyer side? Value on where 2025 is going, and I'm just interested for any sellers maybe listening or you know future sellers. What do you guys see there?
From a buyer side, I've never seen inquiry back to us like ever before. I think
it's heating up.
There's a lot. There's a lot. I know talking to agents and property managers every day. I think in the new year there's going to be another uplift in stock as well too. I think there's a few big auction events people are starting to sort of work towards and starting to collate stock. So I think leading into Christmas, anything that's on the market now, you know, if it doesn't sell prior to market, it's going to look stale. So I think sellers need to look at that very, very, very carefully. It might be an opportunity for a few buyers, but ultimately I think we're leading into a higher stock scenario. Stock that's online now is going to look old by that time.
That's true.
There's usually a price reason to that or a quality reason to that. But I've never seen inquiry like it. We're doing more lead calls now than prospect meetings than we've ever done. So I think the market is going to heat up. I don't know the interest rate cuts. Talking to people we talk to in the financial wealth sort of scenario, there might be a couple of small cuts coming, but I don't know if it's going to be sustained.
I agree.
You know, maybe 0.75% for the year is what I've heard. You know, so that will release some. But we were talking before. We're seeing a number of properties coming to market because of divorce at the moment, which I find awful. You know, but there's obviously that financial stress in the background starting to cook. And I don't know if the rate cuts coming are going to relieve all of that. So I think ultimately, I think the market's going to stay really buoyant and quite competitive through 2025, and there'll be good opportunity to buy. And if you're selling, you know, and you're trying to hold on, I think selling sooner rather than later is probably, I would say, the smarter option. That's what I would think. I don't know.
What's your thoughts, Billy? Coming in 25.
Yeah, if I was to rewind about 6 weeks ago, I feel like I misread the market where I felt like you can feel the market.
You can.
You can feel where it's picking up or slowing down. And about 6 weeks ago, I'm like, man, this is really picking up. But looking back now, what I'm noticing is that listing volume is picking up. So we're unarguably moving into a higher transactional. There's going to be far more transactions happen in the last quarter of this year. But on that note, like the dialogue that I'm hearing from buyers consistently, like for example, you have a Saturday open, 30 groups come through. 6-8 weeks ago, I would have had 2-3 offers in my inbox Saturday night. Now 30 groups come through. The dialogue is, I'm interested, but I've just got a few more to look at, or I'm just waiting to hear back on 2-3 other properties, right? And that just tells me that buyers have got so much more to choose from. So now I'm realizing that, there's more opportunities to transact, to move. Sellers are excited because they're like, there's a place that I could move to. So then they're listing. However, it's increasing days on market. It's reducing auction statistics. And I think it's very slowly just softening prices. And when I say softening, I don't mean going down, but the rate of growth I think, is slowing a little bit. So I think going into next year, if and when there's a few rate cuts, I think we're going to stay on a slow and steady growth, but a higher transactional market.
It's good feedback. Yeah.
The biggest challenge we've had the last 2 years as an agent, anyone, any selling agent can attest to this. You call a seller, say, hey, you're ready to sell, or I've got an opportunity for you and all that, and they say, Billy, we want to go. There's nowhere to go. We jump online and there's just nothing.
Yeah.
Finally, there's
at.
everywhere to go. But those sellers need to now be conscious of that. Hey, buyers have got a lot more to choose from. So we've got to be really sharp with pricing to avoid sitting on the market for 2-3 months.
Absolutely. And that can involve some tough conversations for your agents as well too.
Yeah.
But they have to read the market right as well too.
Yeah. But we were talking about before the conversation an agent has with a seller prior to listing and perhaps some market evidence and comparable sales. That might be different to what an agent says to actual buyers, right?
Yeah.
So the way we operate is we say to a seller, look, based on these comparable sales, we think your property would sit somewhere in this range. When we take it to market, we share those exact same comparable sales with buyers. This is the conversation we've had with the sellers. Now, in a market where there's more listings coming on, we should start to see less overpricing at the point of listing. Because in a market where there's been very minimal amount of listings, agents get desperate for listings. And when agents get desperate, they overprice.
Overquote, yeah.
So we should be starting off, now that everyone's getting a bigger slice of the pie, we should be having more accurate pricing conversations at the point of listing, and sellers should be pre-positioned better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think it's needed. I think
good.
that's needed. I think exactly the last 6 months there's been a lot of that. I need a listing. And you know, when they're driving to the listing, they're calling us to say, have we got to buy? You know, we're getting that phone call all the time. Oh, where do you see the price expectation? You know, and I haven't had that conversation yet. You know, no. Where do you see it? You know, where do you? Because we need to know so we can get our clients engaged in the right price frame. And then we see it come on market 300 grand more. We don't even get engaged. We make our clients aware of it and say, look, this is coming to market. We need to spend some time on market. And we say that to our clients straight up. And here's the information why. You know, unless it's unique, unless it's rare. You know, and we do. Whether that's a $1 million property in Eleanor or an $8 million beach house on Balinga. You know, it's all those different sorts of things. So, you know, 100%. It's really important. We're in the market every day like yourselves, and we pride ourselves on our market knowledge to ensure that we're guiding our clients correctly. That's really important.
100%. And it's a good one. I realise in these kind of markets, it's the true professionals on the sales side can have them tough conversations, you know, and they just kind of know. And I'm always so big on this too, like with sales agents, trying to educate them. If we're working with a really qualified buyer, listing comes up, you know, sometimes it's not the timing of the market, it's the time in the market from that particular buyer. So educated an agent the other week where we had a client who's been looking for 6 months, but they just engaged us for 1 week. A property came up off market in a few days. This lady knew the price of I'm talking square meter, everything. She knew it was the right property. She loved it. We had to educate the kind of seller to understand this. You've only just popped up, I know, but this buyer's been around for 6 months and this is your buyer. So that's a really good one. I guess combining both of them, sometimes it's not timing, it's time in the market. So, and there's a bit of a window, isn't there, fellas? I mean, it's exciting for the real estate market here on the Gold Coast. And a wise man always told me the cost of procrastination, is sometimes the biggest cost of all.
Absolutely.
So, fellas, mate, I'm salivating at the mouth. I think I could have went for another hour there. That was the podcast I needed back when I started my journey, in all honesty. I think auctions, and share this to someone who might be in the market now or just about to go to auction or maybe thinking of selling, maybe highlighting the auction process. I think that's worth its weight in gold, that 30, 40 minutes, whatever that was. So, really good feedback, fellas. I really appreciate your time, and as I said, I'm sure we'll all be seeing each other out in the back rooms.
In the back of the deal room.
Get me to the deal room.
In the deal room. Thanks, fellas. Have a good one.
Thanks, Matt.
Cheers.
Thanks, Pekka.
Cheers.